Got a lot of material this morning. I'll also start by welcoming Alicia Valente to the committee or to the board. She's on recently our newest provincial appointee. So
hi everyone.
The board and farm.
Hi Alicia.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome. Happy to be here. Thanks for letting me sit in.
I think we're at full steam.
Okay. I'm going to start out by reading the land acknowledgement. Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that the land upon which we are undertaking our revitalization efforts is part of the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. In addition, Waterfront Toronto acknowledges that Toronto has historically been a gathering place for many Indigenous people, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples today. So with that, I'd ask for a motion to approve the meeting agenda, which is now up on our screens.
I'll move that, Kevin. Is Jeannie.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any declarations of conflicts of interest to declare?
None.
Okay. Okay, and I sent out a note to the committee this morning on the consent agenda that, well, let me make some opening comments. We fairly straightforward quarter. Once again, we're in a terrific liquidity position. We're moving quickly ahead with the approval of our extended credit lines, and you know, there's not too much unusual or too much for approval, but there are a number of new things going on that I think are important. So I'd like for this meeting and others to simply take the consent agenda as read, and open it up for questions if any of the committee members has questions on the materials, extending the materials from the consent agenda, which basically extends down to all the way through item 4, and the last item on that would be the COVID-19 impact, before we get into the internal audit update. So with that, I'll open it up to questions for anybody on the committee, anything in the materials that they'd like to discuss at this juncture.
Kevin, it's Jeannie here. I just had
Hi.
a couple of questions on the consent agenda.
Okay.
In the financial statements, I just had a quick question. It's page 46 of the board deck. Under note number 17, net other operating income. I see our kind of rental, parking, and other income has come back up to 2.4 million, up significantly from obviously during COVID. It was down. Is this kind of how does this compare to pre-COVID? Is this our normal kind of income level? Maybe Lisa or Sampata, you guys can answer that.
I can start and Sampata can back me up. I actually think, Jeannie, this is better than pre-COVID, and the reason is because we have the revenues from the Porsche lease now in there, which is just over $1 million a year, so that's a significant contribution. And then our parking revenues have come right back, so they're, I think what Sampata might say, they're consistent with pre-COVID. Yeah. We had a really good summer, lots of people on the waterfront. And so that summer, which is the best season, that's in this quarter's results, which also contributes to the much higher number. Sampata, is there anything else that you would say?
On those points, and there's just one more thing that I would like to add. We also had a lot of vacant units last summer, at 200 Queens Quay and some of other properties that we have filled up subsequently. So that's also adding to a bump in the revenues.
So that relates to our Quayside properties, in addition to the 2 properties that Porsche is leasing. 200 Queens Quay is another property that previous years were largely vacant and are almost 100% full now on an interim basis until we revitalize.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Other questions, Jeannie?
Yeah, Kevin, I just had a follow-on on that. Just wondering, can we get a sense of other, I guess, rental revenue income opportunities? Like, are there other pieces of land that could be rented to generate revenue in Waterfront Toronto's portfolio? And do we look at that? I guess it's just an interesting way to kind of, boost the cash balance of it.
So I would say, Michael, right now we're maximizing almost 100%. All of the physical buildings that we have, so in Quayside, that's 259 and 291 Lakeshore and 200 Queens Quay, are 100% leased, including to Porsche. We have 2 other properties that we generate income on, or 3, I should say, from surface parking lots. So 333 Lakeshore, 2 small, those 2 are related to Quayside as well, and then 7 Queens Quay. And so we're limited in terms of, say, for 333 Lakeshore, which is a gravel parking lot, and that's going to form blocks 4 and 5 on Quayside. We're limited in terms of what we can do there because of the zoning currently. So we maximize the revenues using parking, as well as we have some marine vessels docked on the dock hall there. And at 7 Queens Quay, that's the one that we generate a lot of parking revenue from and did very well so far this year, including the summer. We also have a marine use on the dock hall there, where we lease to water taxis and other marine vessels to also generate some income together with Ports Toronto. We do, on this agenda today, we also have our interim activation and event strategy, which Jeff Ross from our innovation team is going to speak to, our strategic innovation team is going to speak to, and that also talks about some other opportunities for use. It's not necessarily maximizing income though, it's there's some trade-offs there, but it's about activating the waterfront, and hopefully eventually we'll be at least break even and maybe being able to make some money through that strategy as well.
Lisa, what's the timing, speaking of that lot, that parcel, what's the timing on that turning into the park that we've promised it to become? Like, how long do we have that land for?
Well, we own the land, so we don't currently have funding to turn it into a park. Okay. There's also some complications related to the Waterfront East LRT, which would result in that area being required as kind of
for staging.
Staging,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's not going to be a park for a long time. So we're going to have this revenue for a while.
That's right. Although when Jeff presents later, he's got a great interim use for 1 day a week for that site that he's going to talk about and present to the committee.
Okay. Other questions? Drew, Jeannie, Michael?
No.
Okay. Let's go to item 5 then, our internal audit update. That's Veronica. Are you there? There you are, Veronica. Hello. Welcome.
I am. Good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good. Over to you. Okay.
Good. So I have an update to provide. There was I think a presentation slide.
Want to go to the next slide, Charmaine?
Next one. Yeah, next. Great, thank you. Really, at this meeting wanted to provide an update on the ongoing review that we're doing for resource and succession planning. So we're in progress. We're just doing some additional validation. We wanted to ensure that we brought up the report to November timeline, and sorry, we're just doing some additional validation on the resource and succession planning and updating the report. So we wanted to ensure that we captured all the current activity with the resource and succession planning, and so we are targeting to have that report update in that by the end of the month, and then we'll provide it to the farm committee at the next meeting. The next item I wanted to just highlight on this plan was we had a look at the upcoming audits, and as both of them were related to looking at processes and controls within the ERP system, we thought it would be more efficient to combine those 2 scopes into the next audit. And so we're looking at we'll scope out the various processes and controls that we'll look at in the ERP and combine those and complete that audit in the new year. So Q4, January to March 2022, and then present that to, we have targeted there for the May 2022 farm meeting. And the rest of the plan is as we had planned it out for communications processes and then records and information management for the 2022-23 year.
Okay. Any, is that your report? Veronica?
Yep,
Anything
that's what I had to update.
Didn't want to make sure it wasn't cutting you off early. Any questions on any of that from the committee members? Okay, thanks very much for that.
No problem.
Let's move into the Portlands flood protection update. That's usually Mr. Stern. Are you there, David?
I am. Good morning. Kevin, just before we get to that, can we go back to one item on the consent agenda? I think we skipped over, which was the approval of the minutes for the past meeting.
Oh, I didn't.
We should actually have a motion for that.
Yeah, that's why I have you here, Ian. I
No, and that's why I want to say on the record, that's why we have Charmaine here who reminded me. Thank you, Charmaine.
Yeah, could I please get a motion to approve the minutes of the prior meeting?
I'll move that, Kevin. It's Jeannie.
Thanks, Jeannie. Seconder?
Second. Yep.
Yep. Okay. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. We can now forge ahead to item 6. Back to you, David.
So George is going to do a bit of an introduction and then I'll get into the details.
Yeah, I'll let David get into the details, but just to give a quick overview of where we're at on this. So I think, again, I've acknowledged the team's done a fantastic job keeping us on time, on budget. As we've gone along, there's been, a number of issues we shared with the board that have been challenges, just like other major projects, in terms of the costs associated with the pandemic and challenges with regards to juggling things as there have been changes in terms of delivery of materials and quite frankly, even access to some of the labor. So the team's done a fantastic job of juggling that, but as the project goes on, we have fewer opportunities to optimize by being able to juggle things because there's fewer things to actually juggle. So that limits our ability to offset any additional challenges that we have. We're still showing, and David will get into this, that we're better than 50-50 in terms of coming on time, on budget, but the risks are catching up with us a bit, and we were continuing to look at opportunities, and I still think hopefully we'll come on time, on budget. But as David will point out, even if we do have the worst scenario, which is some of our risks are materialized and that leads to some delays, it still is within what we identified as our KPIs for a successful delivery of this project. So I think we're still in great shape, and the team has done a great job keeping us kind of on time, on budget so far, but we did want to make sure from a fiduciary responsibility, the board was aware we are having more and more challenges as the project proceeds. So David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, George. Can we scroll ahead, Charmaine? Yeah, past the table. So we are, part of our process, governance and risk management process is to update our ESC, our EAC, so our estimate of completion. We actually do that on a monthly basis, but on a by semi-annual basis. We also do a risk update and risk quantification. So this is the second of those efforts, and the next being next March. Next slide. So just very quickly on current status, I'm pointing out a couple of things here. We currently have, or as at the end of September, we had just under 300 million left to tender and award, so outstanding commitments, excluding the amount of contingency that we're carrying. We have in the last month and a bit since then awarded about 130 million of that. So we're down to under 200 million left to award. And that is in this first category, parks and generally parks. We've got about 63 million left to award in park work, and that those tenders will go out in the next month, and we expect to be able to award those contracts by before the end of March. Next. With respect to bridges, almost fully awarded at this point, just some finishes yet to be done. And obviously we've got bridges in place with our next bridge In the harbor in Dartmouth, hopefully it has launched. They've obviously been affected by weather this week, so it's slowed them down a bit, but the bridge is on the boat, and we expect it to be here within the next 2 weeks. Next. And with respect to roads and services, the work is underway on roads and services. There is a little bit yet to award, not a lot. We've awarded the public realm finishes as well as all the underground work. All important, all to say that we expect by the end of March of 2022, so in the next 6 months, 5 months, we'll have awarded 99% of all of the subtrade contracts, and we'll be able to put the market risk behind us. So that's an important first statement. Next. So where do we stand today? So line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is our EAC forecast as of Q3 2021. You can see that the estimate of completion has increased by about 1.8 million. That's the 929 to 931. Risks or the contingencies reduced by a similar amount, and we are still projecting 1.185 billion as our final cost. Next slide. And please, if you have any questions as I'm going through, stop me and let me know. There were a number of variances in the estimate, some up, some down. We did have a reduction in our earthworks and soil remediation cost estimates this past month, which offset a number of increases, mostly with respect to utilities. You can see Enbridge, Hydro, and the other telecom utilities estimates have increased since our last report. Next. So with respect to cost sharing, we have picked up a little bit there, where we now have an estimate for the telecom companies that will be picking up some recoveries from them. Next. Soft costs effectively unchanged, no material changes in our soft cost estimate for the past 6 months. Next. And with respect to contingency, I want to draw your attention to this one. You can see as of September 2021, we have unallocated 43.1 million in contingency. I would note that as of November of last year, so 12 months ago, the unallocated contingency was estimated to be, or was actually not estimated, was 41.2 million. So our contingency amount, we've actually increased by $2 million over the past 12 months. And what that means is that all of the tenders that we've awarded and all of the changes that we have implemented were all included in our estimate as of last November. So that's a very positive outcome, I think, for the past 12 months, that we have not we've not had to dip into our contingency fund, and in fact have been able to increase it slightly over that period of time. Next. With respect to the risk register, yes.
Oh, sorry, David, it's Jeannie here. I just had a quick question regarding the contingency. Are we drawing it down at a rate that is alarming, or are we drawing it down at a rate that's pretty slow? Like, what's your sense?
We're not drawing it down. We're increasing it. Okay. So I think it's I think it's the. So
you're not worried about it.
Well, no, I'm not going to say that. I would say that the results over the past 12 months have been very good, and you know, they really reflect that we have not been adversely impacted by the market. So we've tendered hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work, and it's essentially all come in on or under budget on a global basis. With respect to the work we've been doing on site and the changes that we've had to issue to reflect site conditions, those have all been captured within the estimated overall cost for the work, as opposed to coming out of the contingency. So I think to date it's been very positive.
So David, on the materials, I just want to clarify, we've had some higher costs, but we've found opportunities to optimize and reduce on other areas. So you're right, on the global sense, we're good, but that was also due to the fact the team worked on finding solutions to those additional pressures.
Cost reductions where we could, for sure. Next. So with respect to the change to the risk register, the risks, the cost or the value of our risks has increased, effectively not because we've added any risks, but because some of the opportunities that, as George just mentioned, have been removed from our risk register. Either we capitalized on those opportunities as part of our tendering process, or we were unable to capitalize. But at any rate, we've increased the value of risks has increased by about 6 million because of the removal or the retiring of those opportunities. Overall, the risk register is reflecting the potential if we realize the risks that are embedded in the register of anywhere from 5 to 8 months of delay. So we're obviously focused on mitigating those risks to the as best we can. They largely relate to utilities and our approvals and the utility work, which could have a potential negative impact on ultimately the ability for our plantings to establish, which could affect our ability to open up the river. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. Next. So this is, oh, no, good. So this is our risk graph. The probability of completion on budget has reduced in the last 6 months. From 63% to 53%. Now, there are a couple of factors associated with that. As we get to the end of tendering, the graph becomes much more vertical, so even minor changes. And as I mentioned, there's there's only a $2 million change in the EAC, but there's a 10% change in the probability. So the impact on the graph is quite a bit more pronounced. But I would say with respect to this that at our last report, when we were at 63%, the results indicated that for about $5.5 million of additional contingency would increase the probability to 75%. Where we stand today is exactly in the same place, that about $5.5 million in additional contingency would increase our probability back up to 75%. So on an actual basis, it's really not any different. It's really, although the percentage has reduced to about 50%. Next. So as I mentioned, there is the potential, if risks are realized, that there could be between, as you can see, 5.7 and 8.4 months of potential delay to get to P75, so that 75% probability on schedule. The consultants analyzed that. The potential costs due to that delay is in the order of 4.2 million. So in overall costs, sort of quote unquote worst case, if all of our risks materialize both on the budget and schedule perspective, we could potentially be looking at somewhere in the order of 5 to 8 month delay. So I'm going to say about 6 months delay and $10 million increase in costs. So you can see the 1.195 million that's highlighted there. So that's obviously why we're laser focused on, continuing to monitor and mitigate to the extent that we can the risks that we've identified.
Sorry, David, can I just clarify? So what you just said is that if all of the risks, the top 10 cost risks and schedule risks that you've identified, if all of them happen, worst case scenario, we're looking at a 5 to 8 month delay and $10 million over budget? Is that correct?
Actually, I think I did say that, but I probably misstated that. I think if all of them happened, it would be catastrophic, to be honest with you. If they happen to the extent that the model suggests they happen, then yes, those would be the results.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand, what our worst cases. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Next. So here's the results table, and I'll focus on column number 5, our update for today. You can see that the probability of achieving target is at 53%. Estimated remaining contingencies at 31 million. So even after including for the all of the estimated costs from Ellis Don's estimate, they are forecasting that we will have $31 million remaining to account for market risk and for site risk. Now, on those two issues, I mentioned that we expect to be fully tendered by the end of March. That will essentially eliminate any further market risk we have. We obviously have to get through that tendering process to determine whether any of the risks we've identified, and we are carrying additional market risk in the risk register, and I'll identify that. Shows up in a couple of slides. I'll talk about that. But the other thing here is that the I guess first or second, third and fourth, or first, third and fourth risks that we have all relate to soil disposition. And by the end of this year, we will have fully excavated the river and are in the process now of quantifying and categorizing all of the soils that have been excavated to determine what their ultimate disposition will be. So again, by the end of the first quarter of next year, we will have a very good handle on where we are with respect to soils, and the risks will essentially start to disappear, and the estimate will contain, or we will have the estimate reflecting what our anticipated actual costs are. So for both of those, so I'd say our top 5 risks, we will have a pretty good handle on where we stand with respect to those risks by the end of first quarter next year, and we'll be able to report it in our next update. Is that any questions on that? And here you go. Here you can see that our from a cost perspective, the risk number 1 is soils risk at 5.1 million. We are then carrying 5 million for excess market risk. And that I would just point out that in the 120 to 30 million that we awarded in the last month, the net result of those tenders was -3 million. So we actually saved $3 million on that value of work. We've got about 150 million left to award. So this 5 million represents a fairly reasonable increase over the escalation that we're already carrying in the estimate. So this is the risk of additional escalation. And then risks 3 and 4 also relate to soil disposal. So as I said, we're working on quantifying those based on actual results on site, and our risk of site conditions will dramatically decrease once that work is completed. You can see we've still got some opportunities that we're pursuing, and we'll keep pursuing. The largest one is one that we're still analyzing, which is whether any parts of the project are or do not attract non-refundable HST, meaning we can, because we're improving values of the land, can we actually get credits for the full harmonized sales tax that we're spending?
Okay, Dave, sorry, Kevin, do you mind if I ask another question?
Yeah,
Kevin, so David, so basically what you're saying is these are the top 5 cost risks. They total 18.2 million. 3 of the 5 are soil related, totaling 12 million. They have a very high probability. So what you're saying though is by the end of March next year, we should have pretty good certainty whether how much of this 12 million we're dipping into or not.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. That's great. Thank you.
Next. So schedule risk, our top schedule risk remains substantial failure to establish plantings. Now I should talk to that a little bit. The risk we face is that, and it's linked, this is all part of the critical path. We need to get the utilities relocated out of Cherry Street, south of Commissioner Street, in order to close Cherry Street. We need to close Cherry Street in order to complete the excavation of the river and the west plug. That is sort of the last piece of work. That and the north plug, which also is dependent on utility installations. So that's at Villiers and the Don Roadway, are the last pieces of excavation for the river that we're doing, and are the last areas that we'll be able to do plantings. We will start plantings in all of the rest of the areas next spring. So we will begin planting in spring of 2022. We will continue planting in the fall of 2022 and then continue in the spring of 2023, because those areas are essentially by next spring will all be complete and ready for plantings. So we've got very, I'd say, small area at risk. Now, the risk comes from the fact that if we are not able to complete the plantings and therefore so that they have established by the fall of 2023, with that that has the potential of delaying the opening of the river until those plantings are completed and established. That could be 12 months because of planting windows. So we would then plant again in the spring of 2024 and not open the river until the fall of 2024. Everything will be done. All the work would be complete. We simply would not be able to start having the river flowing through. So it would affect flood protection by, potentially 6 months. But all of the actual work would be complete, well before then. So I just want to put that in context. We will look at, potential mitigation options for that. We're talking about a very, confined small area, and there may be ways to work around that by doing something other than planting and counting on the planting to help. So I just wanted to point that out. So that's a risk.
David, sorry, related to that, what's the biggest barrier to this? Is it weather?
No, it's not weather. It's essentially the
It'd be the amount of time that is available for the plantings to take, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me walk through what the critical path is and.
You said spring of 2022 to the fall of 2022, possibly spring of 2023, and we're supposed to have this substantially completed by March of 2024. So it looks like you've got a 2-year.
We
runway.
do, but we do, but if we can't get Cherry Street closed and get traffic diverted onto New Cherry and over the bridge, the New Cherry South Bridge, that means we can't complete that excavation and all of the work that's required to get us to the point where we can do plantings in the area from where the river excavation currently stops to the mouth of the river. And that's where the risk really lies, that if we can't get that planting
Why can't we
started,
get Cherry Street closed?
because we have to get because unfortunately there's a gas line in Cherry Street that has to get relocated.
Okay.
So this is why it comes back to the utility
It's
risk.
Enbridge gas, basically.
Enbridge gas. And
okay.
they need
Our
to tunnel
friends.
underneath. They need to tunnel underneath the river, basically under the new Cherry Street Bridge. And right now they're slightly delayed in that effort. They haven't. It wasn't projected to start until just December, January, like right now. It now looks like they're not going to be able to start until March. Now, having said that, that won't affect our schedule by 2 months. But if they're delayed any further than that, it has the potential of delaying it by a substantial amount. And that's why even a 2-month delay could trigger a 6-month delay in being able to open the river because of those planting windows that were required.
So what are we doing to put pressure on our friends at Enbridge?
Oh, we're doing everything.
It sounds like they're the key, right?
Yeah, they are key. We're doing everything we can, but they have federal approvals and other things that they have to get, and they're working on getting those, and we're assisting them as best we can. But unfortunately, the latest schedule information we have from them is that they can't start as early as we had originally anticipated, and they had originally anticipated, quite honestly.
I guess you can't answer this question. Do you think it'll be delayed further? My gut would be yes, but.
I know I can't answer the question, provided
so
they
their
get
2-month delay is a 6-month delay on our end.
Potentially,
Okay.
potentially.
Okay.
Not for sure, but potentially.
Okay.
Yeah, which is why this is a risk rather than an actual. So in the next 6 months, by our next report, we'll also have a better feel for whether or not these schedule risks are really going to adversely impact the completion date or not. And BTY will talk to you about right now. There have been adjustments to the schedule that have made some critical path items have been impacted. Currently, Yellowstone is reflecting the same completion date of December 2023, but BTY has not been able to not been able to validate that the schedule logic all exists to support that maintenance of that date. So we need to do some work with Yellowstone over the next 5 months to really reestablish those predecessors, successors, make sure that the critical path is still appropriately reflected in the schedule, and at the same time be able to address whether or not any of these schedule risks really materialize to the extent that they could, or if we're able to actually achieve the, mitigate and be able to get the work done, or have the utilities get the work done in time to meet the requirements.
So it sounds like the mitigation thing here is to basically to focus on Enbridge, to try to push them to get their stuff done.
Enbridge and hydro. It's actually
and
Enbridge
hydro.
and hydro, and we are doing.
Lovely.
We are doing.
Yeah, I think,
Both
we
of them.
tried to identify, Jeannie, all the way through that. The utilities were one of our big risks, right?
I heard the reference to federal approvals. Is there much that we can do, much that you guys are doing to sort of assist them with that? Enbridge wasn't born yesterday. They know their way through this stuff, I guess, in terms of getting approval to do the work.
They do, and they don't really accept assistance in that regard. They've also indicated there's not. I mean, they've simply got to get documents completed, submitted for approval, and they're working on that, and that is their responsibility to get that done. So there's not unfortunately not a whole lot we can do to expedite that. They've given us, they've delayed their start by a couple of months to reflect that, and we're reflecting that in our schedule now. We will continue to monitor and work with them as best we can to facilitate and help expedite whatever we can, but we don't see a lot of opportunity to move them up to the original schedule at this point. They're not ready to go.
It's an unfortunate knock-on effect too, right? It's completely,
It is. It is.
I mean, 2 = 6, right? Because of the seasons.
That's right.
So best guess is, when do we close Cherry Street? And presumably all the tenants and owners and stuff are fully informed and have, I guess there's another route to those, to,
The Cherry Street barbecue? Is that what you're asking, Drew?
Yeah, no. Yes, and the Cherry Street barbecue are fully on board with what we're doing.
Yay.
We update them every afternoon around noon.
Yeah, sorry, David.
The only other thing I'd say is we also keep the local councillors very informed as we go through this. Yeah.
So it's actually, Cherry Street's a two-phase project, or opening, actually, not closing, because what we will do is open Cherry Street, the new Cherry Street south of Polson, south of Commissioners, and reconnect it at the south end of the river. And then that will happen in the spring to to the summer of next year. And then at the end of summer, into the fall, we will open the balance of Cherry Street north to Lakeshore Boulevard. And that will then allow us to remove the existing Cherry Street Bridge, which is a critical item for flood protection.
So
David, maybe stupid question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Not that I want to take on that, not that we want to take on additional scope or additional expenses, but is there stuff that just we can do?
They won't let us. We've offered.
Wow.
We have contractors on site. They are doing. They won't. Enbridge will only. Enbridge can do Enbridge work, and it's that simple. We've tried. We've offered on the 20-inch pipe across Lakeshore, across the river. We offered to do that work. They refused. We've offered to do this directional drilling, so they're drilling the pipe under the river. We've been doing it already. We've got micro tunneling and directional drilling going on site ourselves, and it would be very simple for us to take that additional work on, but Enbridge won't allow anyone else to do the work.
Maybe we could solve line 5 for them, and that would, simplify their life. And then we could. I'm not being
solve line 5. We wouldn't have any other issues with government.
So David, sorry, one more question on this. Because this is a huge risk. So when will we know that our project is delayed? Is it by March of next year if they haven't got their act together and they haven't started? Like we know we're delayed?
Yeah, we will know on that particular risk for sure. We will know. But
because that seems to kind of knock. I mean, we can't say our project's finished if we can't open the river. That seems to be the critical,
That's-
activity we
That's
need to do
absolutely
here.
right.
No, that's true. So what we're going to have the team look at is, if we're not able to complete that planting in that area, and that's really the key, is there something else we can do instead of? Because you can still do planting in wetlands when they're wet. They don't have to be dry. It's just easier when they're dry. It makes more sense when they're dry. So is there a way we can ensure that we don't have any kind of erosion, soil erosion, or what have you, when the river gets filled up? And you do that through other mechanical means by putting fabrics or geotextiles, so I'm not sure. I need the engineers to look at that. That could increase the cost, but that could offset the schedule impact at the same time. So we will look at whether or not there are other options to the planting establishment that would solve the same engineering problem.
So David, just to clarify too, we will continue to do as much planting as we can in the areas that are excavated. So we will mitigate as much of the risk as possible, but the last part at the mouth is going to be the challenge.
That's the challenge. And there may be other ways around that don't equate to 2 months equals 6 months. So that we have to examine that.
But Jeannie, one of the things that is clear, and the Ontario government has recognized this with regards to some of their priority projects like the Ontario line, is they do need to look at how they can better influence utilities on these major projects that, they are at risk whenever utilities work to their own schedule and sometimes don't coordinate among themselves. But, even the province only focused on compensating them just to make sure that they get done on time. And, I think a lot more needs to be looked at from all levels of government. And the city's had tremendous challenges as well with regards to the utilities. So
the other thing, we've been here, talking about both hydro and Enbridge. I just want to say they're not dragging their feet. They understand the importance of this project. They are doing their best to help us, but they have their own requirements, policies, procedures, all the stuff that they've done for 100 years, for as long as they've been chartered, that they simply don't take shortcuts. Like I said, they won't allow us to help them. That's how strongly they adhere to their process and procedures. Having said that, they're not being obstructionists. They're not doing this out of malice. They are actually working with us and doing what they can to help. So I didn't want to put that in context. Like I'd say we're working well with them. It's just there's a process that has to be followed that we have to.
Do they lack resources? Do they need more staff? Do they need more people? Like, this is kind of outside of their normal. Like, is that what the issue is? Do we need to put pressure on somebody to get them more resources or funding or?
Well, no, you don't want to get them more funding because it's coming out of my pocket.
I mean, I guess, I'm just trying to think about like.
Jeannie, I was
happy to take funding.
Jeannie, I was going to say, in my experience, more resources does not necessarily mean they move faster. Having poured resources at them in a previous life.
Yeah, you're right.
Let me ask it a slightly different way. Is it about approvals, which is to say they are at the behest of somebody else, or is it about their internal? Is it external to them or internal to them that the delay is taking place? Or
yeah, I think it's extra. They've expressed it as being external, quite honestly. But that it's really inside baseball stuff. So we don't have the visibility into everything that they're doing and how they're doing it and why they're doing it. They've indicated that it's getting their external approvals, and that may be a function of them not getting the information to those approving bodies in a timely fashion, or it may not be.
It also could be that they have a queue of other projects that they're going through, and ours fits in somewhere in that list, right? So
it's like
just to answer, we don't know,
right? Is it their queue or is it an approval queue?
Well, if we look at
the approval queue, we could actually probably do a little bit of more about beyond sort of going back to them and saying, can you bump it up on your list? Like, we know that's what we do in a way. But anyway, you guys have figured this, so. It's just too bad that it's 2 = 6, right? 2 is manageable. 6 is not, insignificant in the course of getting up and running. But anyway,
Well, I think the other challenge is we've been so good at mitigating all the risks so far that, this is now frustrating as we get close to the end, right?
Yeah.
George, is it worth doing some sort of like a charm offensive? Let's get everybody around the table, including the approving people who need to approve. I mean, I don't know. Is that worth, instead of protesting, let's do a charm offensive?
David and I have talked about, with the utilities escalating necessarily up to, me meeting with more senior officials and seeing what the real issues are, and therefore looking at what we can do to help if there's anything we can do to help. So, probably, that is probably the most important next step, is just getting clarity around the questions you guys have asked, which is, is it something that's on the outside queue issue, or is it on the inside queue issue, and what are the possible solutions?
So we meet with utilities on a, at least bi-weekly, sometimes weekly basis, and we push them. We'll keep pushing them. We keep, we probe for information to see whether there's things that we can do to assist them, or ways that we can do things differently where they're, if they're delayed, what can we do to mitigate those delays? Well, we continue to do that. This is, we haven't resigned ourselves to anything at the moment. However, we do have to reflect and identify that these risks are there, they're real. They may not be mitigatable ultimately, but we continue to do everything we can on a weekly basis to see if we can mitigate them.
Well, it sounds like we should unleash George. I'm sure they love you, David, but maybe if we send George in as well, that might.
Well, I think we'll do our best.
That may make it a year. Sorry. So I think, George, that's the way I think of it as well. Yeah. Is it internal? Is it external?
Yeah.
And then once we know more then we know a little bit better about strategy, maybe to just make them understand a little bit better the sensitivity of this with the profile and the importance of being on time as well as on budget, but on time, et cetera, and to make sure that, there's a triple play, 2 = 6, and I'm boiling it down to cartoon language, obviously.
Yeah, the other thing too is we may have an opportunity to meet politically if we have our event with the arrival of the third bridge. And that might be the opportunity for me to engage at the political level to see if there's anything that they could do to dig further as to what the issues are and what barriers can be overturned or reduced to get us back on time.
Or should we not also invite the CEOs of Enbridge and Hydro to the bridge thing, and make sure in our speeches we acknowledge their important role in collaborating with us and enabling this important project and get it out of the public record, and they should probably be part of that.
Yeah, I would say we probably have more luck potentially getting to the Toronto Hydro CEO, but Enbridge is probably a bigger challenge.
So Al Monaco's the head of Enbridge, and he's done it for a dozen years, and he knows government, right? He does understand, I know this, the kind of sensitivities of this stuff. So, as does the head of Toronto Hydro, who, we know and stuff like that. But anyway, you're on it. The other thing I would say is the sensitivity of being on time is such that we obviously want to be sure that, our government funders and partners are fully in the loop on the sensitivity of this, but considering they're listening right now, I guess they are. Anyway, so.
And we have an intergovernmental committee where we keep them apprised as well.
Yeah, this was presented to the Executive Steering Committee earlier this week. We'll present again to the board in December. It will get presented to the Federal Oversight Committee in January and the IGSC, so there's no lack of reporting.
Exactly, and that committee is the DMs this week, right? Right?
No, this week is all of the governments are attend, but it's really the committee is the city, TRCA, Waterfront Toronto.
Okay, excuse me. Yeah.
And David, what's their response to something like to this? Like, are they like, as alarmed as we are? Do we need to kind of make sure that they get as alarmed as we are about schedule?
Yeah, no, I think if you asked any of them on the phone, they'd say they're as alarmed as we are about schedule. And I don't know that I can say any more than that in terms of what their views are, but they certainly are aware.
Well, I think the city's been actively involved in engaging with the utilities to try to resolve that.
Okay.
And I think the province and feds recognize that this is an issue, but they've left it with us really to try to address.
I got to think from a political point of view, though, that they're probably they've already probably factored in their own minds there was going to be a 6 months delay here on a project this scale and scope. So why are we panicking here? And it's hard to get them motivated politically when that's their mindset, if that is the case.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the mindset is, but certainly even from our own perspective at the beginning of the pandemic, if we were, to assert, that we would be within the scope that we're in right now, we'd be extremely pleased, right? So part of the challenge is, so many other projects of even smaller scale have, been delayed or been higher cost than. So, I think we're a bit of an anomaly, quite honestly. And so I guess, Kevin, to your point, in the mindset, this would not be unexpected, right?
Yeah. Look, I think just to summarize a little bit, because Dave and I talked about this extensively as well. I think, first of all, that's a very frank and forthright report, David. And, it does feel like the timeline's slipping and the amounts are slipping, or the budget's slipping a tiny bit, although management's done a really good job of increasing the contingency over the last year. That's to be applauded, but that shouldn't be unexpected as we get into these meaty final parts of the project. And as Jeannie pointed out, and you said, David, sort of by March of next year, we're gonna have a really good sense of exactly where we're at, and this tendering process is going to be quite important, and I think we'll have a lot more. But I think you've done a good job of sort of highlighting the risk to us that we're on high alert here, and we've got two things outside of our control right now on that high alert: utilities and God, which covers the utilities piece and the planting piece. So I think that you've done a great job of highlighting all those risks to us, and we'll really look forward to the next report when we find out not if all of them have materialized, but which ones have or which ones have gone away. Is that a pretty fair summation in your mind?
Yes, it is. I think it's a very fair summation. We'll have a much better understanding and appreciation for where we are by next March.
Okay. I didn't mean to cut anybody off. I just wanted to, bring some clarity around the discussion to this point. Are there more questions? Are there further parts of your report that you wanted to highlight, David?
Well, I guess the other thing we've started to do, as we see the trend is, on the probabilities is a little more negative, is we're looking at, so if we actually are, or if we do realize these risks, and we do actually need another $10 million to complete the project, what are we going to do about that? How do we reflect, how do we address that issue? How do we address the schedule issue if those risks come to fruition? So we're looking at what are the, it may not be mitigation the right word, but what is our response to, if it's actually the worst case as opposed to the best case or something better. So we're starting to do that now, and we'll have some ideas about that and how we might approach those issues come next March, regardless of where we stand next March. We'll address what would we do in the eventuality that.
But, to make the point, though, that we'll get into the, 5-year plan in the future and the finances around that. This is why Lisa has really pushed to make sure we have a capital reserve that we can draw on when we do have risks. Since we don't have base funding, we need to make sure that we have funding put aside to mitigate these risks on top of the contingencies, right? Because our contracts with government are basically, it is the amount of money you get and you can't come back to us. So we need to incorporate that into our financial planning.
Okay.
And I think that's all the last point I wanted to make.
Sorry, Kevin, can I ask one more question
Yeah,
regarding
go ahead,
this?
Jeannie. Yeah.
You muted, Jeannie.
Jeannie, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Page 106, the potential enhancements pending availability of funds. I think I've brought this up in the past, that when we look to cut things, we unfortunately look to cut things where the public sees it the most. And when you look at this list, it's all stuff that when, you know, we have the big fanfare and the opening, the public's going to show up, and, you know, it would be unfortunate if for $7.6 million out of a $1.25 billion project that we can't do these extra things to make sure that when we open the river and open our doors, so to speak, that the place looks like amazing, not just nice.
It will look amazing. It's not just nice. This is, I'm not going to say this will gild the lily, because that's not a fair statement.
So I didn't mean that it's not going to look great. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and we've
but
been
I just hate when you take away from public realm. Like, oh, we'll put fewer benches. Like, no,
So-
we need those benches.
So this has been done with the full agreement and acceptance of our consultants and our design group in-house. So you know, these no one will know that this wasn't there if it isn't there. Because we won't, because we didn't. Yeah, do you need, you know, that fencing around every single piece of grass? No, you don't. So, you know, at some point you can bring things back and say, this is a reasonable solution. Do we need 100 benches or 75 benches sufficient? Well, 75 is actually sufficient. 100 would be great if we can afford it.
Okay, so basically this is a reduction in scope based on our expert consultants who kind of came up with this would be the perfect solution, and then we've cut back.
Correct.
So I guess what I'm saying is that 7.6 million out of $1.25 billion, I'm hoping that somewhere, you know, we can, towards the end, we can find this money, and let's just do it to the vision that, you know, that our team originally had.
Yeah, I think, Jeannie, once, as David and Kevin pointed out, once we get to March and we actually have a better idea of what the ultimate impact on our budget will be, we will consider options to mitigate any reduction. But, you know, right now it's too early to be.
Oh, I understand. Yeah. But I just wanted to say, like, let's not forget that this is for the public. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. That's your report. Again, thanks for the frankness and openness on that, David, and management. I think we are now going into the BTY report. Is that correct?
There's a quick program update that I will briefly.
Yeah, there it is. Yep.
Walk through. We've not yet been able to get the board on site, so the best we can do is provide some photos and video. We don't have any video this month, but we do have photos. So I did talk about the status of the excavation, and really everything you see in the from the Central River Valley to the ice management area to the Don Greenway will be excavated, fully excavated, and ready for planting next spring. It's really only the very north piece at Keating Channel and the very west piece at the Polson Slip that are the outstanding pieces. So next. I'm not going to walk you through. This is the latest, or not, almost the latest drone video photograph of the site. You can see the river outline. We've got the Commissioner Street Bridge being finally completed. And in the next couple of weeks, as I mentioned, the Cherry South Bridge on the left. Next. So this is the work going on to weld the two halves of the Commissioner Street Bridge together. It's very interesting because they have to actually heat all of the metal in that tent to over 200 degrees Fahrenheit so that they don't induce any heat stress. So the welders that go in there go in for a couple of hours wearing a cold suit then come back out, and the next one goes in. It's quite the process. You'll see the welder in the next photo. Not wearing a cold suit yet, but that's what's involved in making sure that the work happens correctly. Next. Central River Valley, you can see the floor of the river. You can see the on the right side of the picture, there's the fabric soil lifts. There's a better picture of that coming up. And on the left side, the crib walls with the root wads that form both the structure of the river bank as well as fish habitat. Next. Here's the fabric encapsulated soil lifts, so the FES lifts. And essentially this is what we plant into. So this is where the plants need to establish. Their roots will grab onto the burlap. The burlap is there to keep, and it's structured in such a way to keep erosion from happening. Next. In the ice management area, so this is looking north towards the North Plug. We are in the process of completing the environmental risk management areas so that we can begin the finishes. And the finishes in this area are largely stone, very large armor stone, because this is the ice management area. The ice can damage any kind of planting, so there's really no planting to speak of north of the Commissioner Street Bridge. Next. Just some of the stuff we found excavating in the elbow. Next. I think I mentioned this previously. We did have the fortunate happenstance that when we exposed one of the layers of peat and the contractor moved on and excavated other layers, we believe that existing 100-year-old seeds in that peat germinated. These bulrushes are not found in the region anymore, so we have harvested them. They are being cared for by TRCA, and we've sent samples off to the U of T to establish through genetic testing that in fact we are looking at 100-year-old plants, and we do intend to replant these in the river when that as soon as that opportunity makes itself available. Next. Mentioned we were doing microtunneling, so we've got we're tunneling under the river in a few places for stormwater, sanitary, water mains. Next. This is the Canoe Cove excavation is commenced on the south side of Promontory Park, the north side of Polson Slip, and we are prepared for, on the left, the arrival of the Cherry Street South Bridge. Foundations and abutments are all in, and the bridge will be here in 2 weeks or so. Road work I mentioned is ongoing, so that's the water main getting ready to be installed in Commissioner Street between Old Cherry and New Cherry, and all of those utilities, wet and dry utility work has commenced, and will continue until the roads are opened next summer and fall. Next. I think you may have seen this. So this is the beginnings of the Gardner ramp removal that commenced on Labor Day weekend. All of that work, we made great progress and headway, and all of that work was completed by the first week in October. Next, just some other pictures of that demolition in progress. Next. And next, this was the last piece. Very expensive structure to hold up a couple of traffic lights, but it is gone now too. This is just a visual representation of where work's happening, and again, work is happening from the rail corridor on the north and the SDMA all the way to the ship channel on the south, from the Don roadway right to the inner harbor. So very massive site. I'm not going to get into the work accomplished. I talked about the tendering that's in progress and what's yet to be done. So I'll leave that to be taken as read. Same next as well. next period. With respect to complaints tracking on the project, PLFP project, the flood protection project, only 2 complaints in the quarter. However, the quarter was also when we started the demolition, did the demolition of the Gardner. So we had a substantial number of complaints with respect to cyclists, detours, noise, traffic, etc. So, and we were responding to those, both in writing as well as, implementing whatever changes we could on site to address whatever complaints we received. And as we begin some more closures in the next couple of weeks, we expect our level of complaints to accelerate again, and we'll continue to monitor and address them as they come in. Indigenous communities, we continue to work with our Indigenous partners. The of most interest at the moment is the work we're doing to identify 5 or 6 Indigenous artists and consultants to design a number of installations within the parks, including signage and other elements that will reflect the Indigenous heritage and culture in the area. Next. And then from a public engagement perspective, I think George mentioned we're trying to get something arranged for the arrival of the Cherry South Bridge this month or early December. And then there'll be additional milestones next year as the final bridge arrives and we begin to open the roads, Cherry Street, Commissioner Street, etc. That's that. And now it's, sorry, BTY is next.
Great to see it visually, David. Thanks, and look forward to seeing it in person. And that's interesting news on regenerating growth down there. It's a good sign. Okay, let's go to, unless there's more questions there, let's go to BTY.
Hi, good morning, everybody. So I'm here to speak to you about the budget schedule and risks as usual. So I'm not going to labour on the points that David have made, but I would like to just flag some key points that are inside the body of our report. So specifically regarding the budget, we noted at this period that the biannual estimate at completion had been updated, and that included all the 90% cost estimates and the risk quantification. A key thing about the cost estimates, at 90%, they're all at 90% complete now. However, we did note that for the 4 remaining projects that there was a deviation in the process of those, the preparation of the cost estimates from a 4-stage process to a 3-stage process, which we speak to. We're still undergoing the process of reviewing those estimates, and so we're not flagging an issue as such. It's just a noted change in process. As of right now, we're 70%, 77% committed on the project, and pending commitments are 28% or 322 million. So I think that's it on the budget. If there are any questions, happy to take them now, or I can carry on to schedule. So with regards to the schedule, we undertook a review of the monthly updates for the quarter, and we compared those to the baseline schedule, which had been reforecast in February, March of 2021. We noted that there was a number of slippages to activities, including critical path activities. Key thing obviously about critical path activities slippage is that it should impact the completion date milestone of December 2023. We noted that there was no change to that date, so we were unable to validate that that was correct. It's our opinion that there probably is some slippage. We've noted that the maximum delay was up to 47 weeks, but the average delay across all activities was 3.9 weeks. Our recommendation is that project is re-baselined after the winter work window has been completed, so that will be around March 2022, April 2022 kind of timeline. Currently, we have observed that 10 of the 22 sub-projects are currently delayed. And then with regards to risk, I think David spoke at length about those, and all the key risks are being carried, which are consistent with what we're seeing in the marketplace right now, particularly related to escalation. That's a brief summary of the report. Does anybody have any questions that I can respond to?
Joanne, you also heard my summation of the discussion around these risks and timing. Did you also agree in general with what that summation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. There has been a request to have a brief in-camera session with you, so we'll ask you to. I'm not sure if it's stick around or come back in, Ian. Maybe you can help me here in terms of how we're going to run that.
We do that at the end.
Yeah, we do it at the end, but so Joanne, whichever you prefer, if you want to stick through to the rest of the meeting, that's fine. Otherwise, we'll give you a heads up when we're about to go into that part of the meeting and you can rejoin, whichever you prefer.
I can stick around, that's fine, yes.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Go back to my. Any other questions there for while we have Joanne on, or we can save it for the in camera? Okay. Now I think we are into the closed session. Or am I correct, Ian?
Yes, if you just have a motion to go into closed session, and then we can do that.
Can I please get that motion?
I'll move that, Kevin. It's Jeannie.
Thanks, Jeannie.
I'll second. Well,
Second,
I'll
okay.
second.
We are into the closed session.
And actually, thank you. So we've had the motion. We're back in open session now. In front of us are the three resolutions arising from the closed session discussions. The first one relates to the approval of the minutes. The second relates to the approval of the fundraising strategy and plan as detailed in the report presented to the committee. And the third one is the approval of the 5-year plan. And I'm sorry, I just want to revise what I just said. The last two are actually recommending that the board approve at the upcoming meeting.
Okay.
And I would ask for separate resolutions on each.
I'll ask for the minutes first. Can I get a motion on that?
I'll move that, Kevin.
Okay, seconded. All in favor? Okay. On the philanthropy planning study, we've seen all this before. Can I get a motion on that?
Should we add in there? I think George had said that they were going to add in that list of items of concern, like a question number 8, like that they need to resolve the issue of kind of, the longevity. I don't know if we can pass this, but with just adding in wording, Ian, that will be added to.
Maybe what I suggest is it says as detailed in the report presented to the meeting, just say subject to the comments presented
by
the committee.
All right, great.
Okay, can I get that message from you then? The motion from you then, Jeannie?
Yep, I'll move that.
Okay, seconded.
Yep.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. And then the draft rolling 5-year strategic plan, which Lisa walked us through. Can I get a motion from that for that?
And
Drew?
the resolution though is the big long one, right? Ian, wasn't there a big one page?
That's the background information. The resolution itself is sufficient for what you have in front of you now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And all these are for recommendation to the board.
Yeah,
Lisa.
that's true.
Okay. Can I get a motion on that one?
Yeah, I'll move.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor? That's
Colitis.
carried. Okay, 11:34 in your time zone. Is there anything else that we need to discuss before we take a motion to adjourn?